Day one at TikTok. Let's go!
Anyway, thank you for taking the time. I've been thinking quite long on how to say this, and there's no easy way to do so. So I've actually decided to hand in my resignation today, and I really wanted to take the time to chat with you and share my reasons why. Hi friends, my name is Jamie. For those of you who are new here, it's great to have you on the channel. Some of you may know me as the person who put out a video on the TikTok Singapore office a couple of months ago, but yes, I've left TikTok in just 4 months, and in this video, I'm going to share some of the reasons why. So I started my journey at TikTok Singapore in mid-August 2021. I had just left the safe Google bubble after 7 years, and I was really excited for the change and to really learn something new. I absolutely loved my time at Google, and I still miss the place very much. Spending a good part of my early working years at Google basically shaped the way I thought and worked. But I wanted to see, what was out there in the big scary corporate world and have a taste of it. So with Google growing into such a big company, I found my job scope becoming more and more specialized. In all honesty, I think this is quite normal, right, as any company grows and scales. However, I consider myself a jack of all trades sort of a person, and I enjoy working on projects that require more breadth of scope. So when the employer branding opportunity at TikTok came along, it really got my attention. I heard that, TikTok was the new challenger in tech, which kind of combined startup dynamics and tech giant scale, and essentially what attracted me was the fast pace of work, the opportunity to build things up from the ground, set up processes, and kind of like fix things along the way. After much deliberation, I took the leap of faith and decided to quit Google and join TikTok. Month 1. Of course, when I joined, I was really excited. We were welcomed with some cool swag and a cool bite dance t-shirt, and we were onboarded virtually as well. I took the first month to really acclimate myself to understand how each business unit functioned, how the organization was set up in general, and just took the time to get to know my stakeholders, my partners, and teammates. I tried to get a sense of, the company's culture, as well as to get used to a new way of working. The company actually used their own collaboration tool called Lark. Essentially, it's a tool very similar to Slack. Basically, everything was done via pings. We didn't use any emails internally. Months 2 to 3. As time went by, I started to learn and absorb new concepts of digital marketing and employer branding. I was making great progress on, helping my stakeholders on recruitment, marketing, and helping them to really close those hiring gaps. As one of the weekends came to an end, I started to get, the Monday blues. I thought, hey, this is pretty normal, right? It happens to everyone, right? But then this started happening again and again every single week, and I noticed other things about myself as well. I constantly felt tired. I felt incredibly drained by work. All I wanted to do was just sit back, be a couch potato, and watch Netflix. I even lost my sense of creativity, and I lost the drive to want to produce more TikTok or YouTube content. My physical health also took a bit of a toll, even though I was still training in the gym once or twice a week, just going through the motions. But, I ate whatever I wanted, I snacked, I drank, that sort of thing. I somehow also became this really grumpy person who just wasn't happy, just because. And that obviously didn't make me a very positive person to be around. And then it hit me. I wasn't happy at work, and it was draining me in more than one way. I started to think about what went wrong and why I constantly felt so drained. I took a few days to journal and reflect on how I was feeling, and came to a couple of realizations. Number 1, my scope of work, which is employer branding, was not what I wanted to pursue in the long run. Looking back at the journey of my entire career, I realized that the most fun, rewarding, and fulfilling part of it was when I was actually working with students. Most of my work in employer branding, however, just didn't necessarily allow me to work directly with students. It was a lot more of working with vendors, managing social posts, ensuring that our Glassdoor scores were improved and maintained, that sort of thing. To add on, the part I enjoyed the most during my time at TikTok was actually when I was managing my first ever official intern. Hi Amanda. So I realized that I really missed coaching and mentoring students. Number 2, Lark was just not for me. You know, people kept telling me, oh, you'll get used to it. After 3.5 months of using it daily, I still wasn't loving it. I must say though, as a tool, it is definitely smart in its own little ways. One of the features I actually miss is kind of the ability to reply comments with emojis. And yes, they were really cute emojis and they were really efficient in conveying messages. Simple things like if someone sends something to you, you just have to click an OK emoji. That sort of thing. Very expressive emoji. So. However, it was really still annoying for me. I consider myself an email person. It's always been sort of my to-do list at work, and simply because of the way I work, I only check email about 2 to 3 times a day, and I block out time to actually clear my emails. I work with a lot of intention and focus, so using Lark was just impossible. Every other minute I'd get a ping from someone asking for something, and this would interrupt my train of thought, especially when I was trying to focus on my tasks or projects at hand. I literally couldn't take a break from it unless I quit the app. But because it was a micro app with documents and calendars and pings kind of embedded within it, I could risk missing out on a meeting, or it'd be really just hard to find documents. Millennials will remember this, but back in the old days on MSN Messenger, there was this nudge function which basically sort of vibrates your whole screen. There's a similar function on Lark, and it's called a buzz. It really annoys me, like really annoys me. But apparently it's needed because some folks have up to 1,000 plus unread messages. So it's just a way to get someone's attention. Another pain point I had was, the organization of documents and files. With emails, I think I could easily tag them and file them away. With Lark, I literally had to remember who sent me what, and then kind of scroll and search through, and sometimes through all the multiple chats, just to locate that document or file. And this really made working for me incredibly inefficient. I could spend a good 10 minutes just hunting for a document. So overall, Lark was just not a tool for me and just didn't fit in with the way I work. Number 3, the organization was difficult to navigate, and it was tough to kind of standardize or scale any processes. I found it relatively difficult to figure out who to look for in certain teams, as the company did not have any internal organization charts. The company attributes this to promote having a flat hierarchy, but legend has it that someone actually leaked the org charts before, so they just decided to do away with it. When someone random pinged me, I had to go onto LinkedIn to figure out which team they were from, what they did. Let's just say LinkedIn was a tab on my browser that was constantly open. With over 100,000 employees worldwide, the company still strives to operate as a startup. Believe me when I say there are no shortages of problems to solve at this company, and you really get to build things up from scratch. For a company moving and growing at lightning speed, the pace of execution was and is phenomenal. However, at times I did feel that we ended up doing things that were not particularly strategic, but instead extremely short-term and tactical, and this resulted in processes being very specific to each organization. Things were not standardized and could not be pushed out horizontally across the entire organization as a whole, thus resulting in a lot of duplication of ideas and work.
Number 4, culture.
ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, is striving to be an international company, but at this stage of their journey of growth, they are very much still a Chinese tech company in the way they think and operate. While I didn't experience any of the famous 996 working hours in my team, I didn't have a sense of pride or loyalty to the company instilled within me. There was a fair bit of effort placed on, acclimating each business unit to what our Byte styles were, which essentially are our values. But personally, I found it really hard to understand and resonate with our values. Perhaps it was a factor of working from home that didn't allow for enough in-person interactions to happen for me to feel the culture, and maybe 4 months is just too short a time for me to make such a conclusion. Also, I do believe that it was just innately a culture shock for me, as the culture was and is very different than what it was at Google, which is understandable, given how different Western and Eastern cultures are. I have to say, despite not being able to get an understanding of the culture, I've met some really smart and lovely people in the organization who really know their stuff. I had the privilege and chance to get to know them, to learn from them as well, and I'm just so grateful for that. There were, of course, other push and pull factors that I considered before leaving, but these are the main 4 reasons that shaped my decision. Before I pulled the plug though, I did a whole lot of thinking, and I even wrote up a very extensive pros and cons list to help me make a decision. Don't get me wrong, even though I chose to leave in such a short span of time, I 100% do not regret joining TikTok at all. In fact, I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to have worked there. I gained new knowledge, experienced new things, learned more about myself, and met amazing colleagues who I am now really proud to call my friends. Takeaways. Number 1. The probation period is put in place for both you and the company to assess each other. So if you feel it's not the right place for you, it's best to really just cut your losses and get out quickly. Don't be afraid to make a bold career move, especially if you know it's the right thing to do for yourself, and even if it feels like you're moving backwards in your career. Sometimes you need to make mistakes in the wrong direction to figure out what you don't like, so that you can pivot and you can move in the right direction. Now I know employer branding is definitely not for me, and my next job has me working closely with students once again, and that just brings such, a thrill or joy to my heart. Don't underestimate the importance of company culture. Culture is one of the most important things in a company. Culture will make or break your business, as said by Laszlo Bock, the former head of people operations at Google. Lots of people tend to take it for granted but end up silently suffering and sucking up how they feel. So remember to make it a point to kind of assess this during your interviews. Try to ask questions to get a feel of how people are like in general. When interviewing for my next job, I did ask a lot more questions on the topic of how's your culture like in this company. But in all honesty, the interviewing experience with my next company was unparalleled, and I was just really impressed with how each interviewer conducted their interviews, how they raved about the culture of the company. Now those are the kind of signs you should look out for when you're interviewing. Last but not least, don't burn bridges and keep in touch with the colleagues that have made an impact in your life, because you never really know when you'll end up working with them again. So leave on a good note. Really ensure that you have amazing handover documents so you don't leave anyone hanging or lost. It's really the responsible thing to do. One more thing. This video is not meant to flame or disregard ByteDance or TikTok as a bad place to work in any way. I have other colleagues who are really enjoying themselves and are thriving because the work that they are doing, it challenges them intellectually. Understand that everyone is different and everyone has different priorities in their life. TikTok simply just wasn't the right place for me to work at, but it could certainly be for another person. And I just wanted to share my takeaways as I found this experience a really interesting one. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you're still here, thank you for sticking around. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel, more than you know. And yeah, subscribe for more content like this. I'll see you in the next video, and thanks for watching.